Hi, my name is Kris Benge, and I'm a gardener. I've started a business this last year called GrowVeggiePlants.com, and the mission of that business is to help people find a purpose in gardening. And I like to help people who are maybe new to gardening or maybe haven't had a lot of success and want to try some new things. I really like helping them to grow their skills and to try giving them some tips and things like that. So in my business, I've sold seedlings that I've started inside and gotten to meet a lot of great people and feel like I've really, helped people get started, but I want to take that up to the next level. I have been doing a blog and I want to do more of that, more writing. And I put tips on my website, growveggieplants.com. But my next step really is to start this video blog. And my hope is that I can show people my garden and talk about some of the things that I've done and that I've learned that have helped me succeed in my gardening over the course of my life, which I've been fortunate to always really be able to have a garden throughout my life, but I've been able to spend more time on it now that my kids are a little older, and it's really just something that brings me peace and joy. And so I really want to share that peace and joy with others and help you hopefully get into gardening yourself. So today, as my first blog, I'm going to kind of give you a tour of my garden. I've learned a lot of things through trial and error, and there's a lot of different ways to succeed at gardening. So the way that I do things isn't necessarily right, but I still feel like I have some knowledge to share, and I've watched a lot of videos from other folks that have really helped me. So I wanted to try and be able to help people myself. So I'm going to give you a tour of my garden today. Today is July 10th, 2021, and so we're about in the middle of the growing season. I started I transplanted most of my outdoor plants towards the end of May, middle to end of May. So you'll be able to see I don't have a lot of things that are ripe yet, but a lot of things that are pretty far along and getting close to ripening. So here we go with the tour. All right, so these are some of my tomato plants. They are doing really well. I'm really happy with how they've turned out. And you can see that I decided this year to use this old soccer goal as a trellis. And so there's a lot of ways to trellis, or you can use cages and stakes. But I just thought this has been sitting in my yard for a long time, so I wanted to try and see if I could put it to some good use. So you can see that I have strings tied to the top, and I've been clipping or tying the tomato plants to the strings and running them up there, and then also using some stakes. And over here I have some other cages and different things. But something about that I wanted to teach you in this first video is about how to prune your tomatoes. And so one of the things that you can do is look for these suckers. And so how I describe the suckers is it's growing in the armpit. So this is the main stem of the plant. You can see that it's growing up, and that's the main stem. And then you can see that we have some flowers forming, but then over here this is a branch, and then in between, in what I like to call the armpit, and others call it, that is a sucker. And so you want to break those off or pinch those off. The reason is because if you don't, that will turn into another main stem, and you can see that's how plants get out of control really quickly. So I like to limit mine to 1 or 2 main stems. That gives the main stems and the fruit growing on the main stems more energy. Otherwise, you end up with giving a lot of your energy to the foliage and the green, the leaves and things like that, and not as much toward the tomatoes. So I always try and pinch off those suckers. I'll see if I can find another one. So here's another one right here in the armpit, and you can just pinch it off. If you don't, like here's a big one. So just to show you this one here, see what that's an armpit. And if you let it get much bigger, it's going to be hard, to feel like it could have flowers on it, and you're not going to want to, you know, ruin a flower, but also it gets harder to tell the difference between that stem and the main stem. So that's my first tip. The other thing that I do is I always try and take off the bottom leaves. Anything that's close to the ground, maybe a foot or so up off the ground, you can take off, because that helps you be able to see the fruit better. Otherwise you get so many leaves that you can't tell when your tomatoes are getting ripe. And then B, if it touches the ground, it could get diseased on it, get disease, and it's closer to the ground where soil could splash up if it's raining. So there's a lot of really good reasons. And then, like I said, you want to give more energy to the tomatoes that are ripening than the leaves. And so I also like to thin out some of the other branches and leaves. Just make sure that it's not the main stem, so you want to make sure to kind of follow that main stem up and make sure that you don't break that off. But otherwise, the other reason that you want to kind of thin it out is because that way you have a little more airflow, and that way the tomatoes can get more, airflow is good for them. So you can see there, I have a lot of green tomatoes it's going to be a great season for growing tomatoes. And I also like to use cages. So I use cages, but then I also like to use stakes with the cages. So you can see some of these are getting much taller than the cage, and so I'm going to try and get maybe some 6-foot stakes, but I also have them tied to that post there. So you want to try and keep the tomatoes from growing onto the ground as much as you can. So whatever you can do to stake them up, cage them up, tie them up to the strings from a large trellis, anything you can do to keep them up off the ground is going to help them be healthier and easier to manage and easier to see what you're doing. So those are my tomatoes. Next, I'm going to show you some pepper plants. I have a good crop of pepper plants here. You can see they're doing quite well. A lot of peppers forming on those. So again, with peppers, I like to trim off the leaves off the very bottom that are touching the ground. And I'll put those in the compost pile. But a lot of people top their peppers off, which is, I haven't done that, but that would be taking off the very top crown, which would help the pepper plant give more energy and focus to the branches and the fruit that are down below. So I may decide to do that, but haven't done that yet this year. So we'll give that a try. But you can see the peppers are doing well. And then next we have the beans. So I have bush beans in the front, and then I have some climbing pole beans in the back, and those like to climb up a trellis, so I have some trellises there for them to climb on. Beans are getting lots of flowers, so it won't be long and I'll have some green beans and some yellow wax beans. Then I have some more tomato plants. Then these are sweet potatoes, which I haven't done before, but they're working out super well. And I'm excited to see what they turn out to be. I ordered them online as slips, which are sort of roots that don't really look like they're alive, but plant them and they really greened up and they're doing great. So then we have my squash plants that are also doing really well. And I also prune squash. I try to, again, any leaves that are sort of dead or browning or older, I like to trim those off. It helps with the airflow, it helps with disease management. So you can see I've got some nice squash growing in there. So I have some zucchini and some scallop squash, some more peppers. So you can see I got lots of peppers coming. And then I have some onions that I started. And I have a weed grass. So, yeah, lots of peppers there too. Then I have more tomatoes over here in this raised bed. So one of the things that I did this year, or that I always do, is I like to try different varieties. And so I always label my plants so that I can see what I have and know which things are working well and which things I might want to try again next year. So hopefully if anybody has luck with anything they bought from me, they'll let me know what worked out well so that I can be sure and do those again. Here are some more raised beds that I started this year. I had one last year, but I made it a little smaller and added a couple more, so now I have 4 back here in this corner. This one is mostly cherry tomatoes, so you can see it's going really well. I'm starting to get some ripe ones. I'm super excited. These are beet greens, so have been picking those and eating them in my salads, and then more leaves grow back. So there's more red cherries back in there. So I'll be able to start harvesting some of these real soon. Then moving on, I have in this bed I had broccoli and cauliflower that I've already harvested. It was awesome, and I do have still another cauliflower coming there. This particular variety turns purple, so that's kind of fun. And I'm going to clear these out soon and plant some fall crops in here. So maybe some lettuce or some more cucumbers and things that will be ready for a fall harvest. Over here I have cucumbers. So the cucumbers love growing up the fence, in the trellises. So you can see I end up having them outside in the garden, in the park. So I am able to utilize that fence really well, and I've got a lot of fun cucumbers growing. I've already picked a few, so they're doing great. Then I have some more tomatoes and some more peppers. You can see these Italico peppers down in here are getting big, and they will turn red. And then over here I have a cucumber plant that came up as a volunteer from last year, so that's kind of fun. And then I have some cabbage. So there's a red cabbage and a green cabbage and some more peppers and another red cabbage. So I have lots of stuff growing this year. And one thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is mulching. So I like to mulch. I think there's a lot of benefits to mulching. So it keeps the weeds down. It makes the weeds easier to see so that you can find them when it's time to pick them. It controls moisture. It keeps the ground from drying out as fast. And I just think it looks nicer. So I have 3 different things that I'm using this year. So you can see I have some straw back in here. So I bought straw. There's a couple different kinds of straw that I've bought on Amazon that come in a bale or in a box, and it's pretty inexpensive. It goes a long way. And also I have some pine needles there from my neighbor's tree, and they let me pick them and box them up last year. So I was able to utilize those. And then over in the tomato section I have grass clippings, and I think grass clippings are super nice too. Obviously they are abundant this time of year if you have a bag catcher on your mower, and so you just don't want to put them on too thick so that they would start composting and burn the soil, get too, because compost will heat up, and then that could heat up the ground too much. So, but just a nice thin layer so they dry out, and so that's how I like to use mulch. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce all these lovely dogs that have been walking around in the background. We have Cooper, that's my dog Cooper, and then we have Mia and Milo that are my daughter Abby's dogs. And then we have Ellie somewhere, and there's Ellie. That's my little girl. She's a nice girl too. So those are my garden buddies today. So I also wanted to show you a few things here on my deck. I wanted to show you, first of all, this Super Sweet 100 cherry tomato that I have growing in a pot. And I am standing up on a step, so if I come down here, this is looking straight on, and I'm 5'6", so you can see that I think it's at least 7 or 8 feet tall. And I'm going to try and see if I can keep adding stakes to see if I can get it as tall as the roof. So we're starting to get some ripened tomatoes on there as well. But that is pretty fun. I don't normally grow cherry tomatoes in a pot because it's indeterminate and it will just keep growing and growing. I'll do another video sometime on the difference between determinate and indeterminate tomatoes and some more tomato growing tips. But I decided to go ahead and try that. This year I saw a video where a guy, he took 2 tomato cages and turned them in upside down and kind of wired them together to some posts, and so I tried that. So I was able to get the cage up pretty high, and then just using some stakes to go on up from there. And then over here on my deck I have a really nice tall pepper plant that you can see is getting some ripe peppers on it, and lots more coming. And then I have another tomato plant here, and then I have a cucumber plant with another trellis, so kind of fun to have that on the deck. And then over here is beautiful eggplant. I think eggplant is one of the most beautiful plants to grow. It's nice big leaves and purple flowers, and I do have a nice eggplant in there that I'm getting ready to harvest. So you can see that they do produce, and I have a couple more down there that aren't as big, but hopefully they'll still turn out too. So anyway, that is my garden. So I have those raised beds back there, and I have my main garden over there, and then my other raised beds in the back. So I love my view of my backyard. I have a nice view of the Pleasant Hill Water Tower, the park, and also my church, Oakwood United Methodist Church in Pleasant Hill. So love my backyard, love my garden, and looking forward to sharing it with you some more. So there you have it. That's my first video blog. Hope you enjoyed the tour of my garden. I'm gonna try and keep you up to date on my happenings here in the garden, and I hope that you can share the video, you can subscribe, put some comments if there's something that you would like to see me do a video about. I'm looking forward to doing this and have a lot of ideas for things that I could share with you, and looking forward to growing with you. Thanks.